If you complain about Hollywood movies, go watch Novocaine. I'm begging you. This is everything you've been asking for from Hollywood. It's an original movie, it's less than 2 hours long, it's got great action and really tight writing, it's got a low production budget with advertising that acts like a big budget movie, like cardboard cutouts in the theater, and actually posting social media ads instead of every other movie that I don't get ads for movies. I watch more ads than most people, and still advertisers don't know to show me trailers, but this is one of the only trailers that I've seen while scrolling through TikTok. And it's got a big name lead. This is exactly the sort of movie that would come out in like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And it's got some decent racial diversity. Amber Midthunder's parents are Thai and Native American, Jacob Batalon is Hawaiian with Filipino ancestry, and Betty Gabriel is black. And on top of that, it's got some really solid disability representation. Actually, let's talk more about that disability representation, because I kind of love how they approach it, and I kind of don't, because, okay, I need to be clear about this. I don't have this disorder. I have exactly the opposite of this disorder. The guy in the movie has this genetic disorder where he doesn't feel pain, and they treat it as a disability because to him, it is. I have fibromyalgia, which is where my nerves interpret all stimulus as pain, and then they do weird stuff so that my brain doesn't have to actually experience the pain. But I kind of love how this movie opens with just a normal day for him. And we get to see how normal of a guy he is. He's waking up to an alarm, he's making a breakfast smoothie, he's going to work at the bank. And then we realize throughout the day how much of that normal stuff is affected by his disability. Like, the reason he's drinking a breakfast smoothie isn't because he's trying to be healthy, it's because he can't eat solid food. There's tennis balls on the corner of every table because he knows that he can bump into that table really, really easily and he might not even notice. And he makes it very clear that this is not a superpower. This is a disability. Sure, he's accommodated for in a lot of ways, but he's still disabled, even with the accommodations. Like, he has to be constantly on his guard about what does he touch, because he knows that he could accidentally step on a nail and not even realize it until hours later, because that's actually happened to him in the past. And he can't eat solid food because he's worried about biting his tongue off. And he can barely go outside and have a social life. There's so many ways that this disables him, that he can't do the things that normal people can do. And then, for the rest of the movie, he basically becomes a superhero. He starts weaponizing his disability, which, for me, was absolutely delightful. For other disabled people, that's going to rub them the wrong way. I just had a lot of fun with watching him actually take advantage of his disability in really clever ways, and seeing how his accommodations became weapons for him. Like, he had to learn a lot of first aid as a kid. Now he knows first aid, and he's able to use that throughout the fight scenes. He knows exactly where to hurt people, and he knows exactly how to heal people. It's almost like John Wick as a nurse. And that brings out one of the main themes of the movie. Novocaine knows that it is a movie about pain. The movie itself is very grateful for the experience of pain, whether it's physical pain, because pain is a warning sign. When we hurt ourselves, the feeling of pain in our brains is to remind us, don't do that, and it's also to remind us, pay attention to that, there's a problem in your body. And because the main character doesn't get that warning sign, we see how much it worsens his life. And it's also a celebration of emotional pain. Not in the sense of like inflicting it on other people, but the scars that we have on our hearts and on our souls. The main guy and the main love interest both have a lot of these emotional scars that really bring them together, but also let them open up and feel connected. The way that they find community and the way that they find safety and the way that they ask for help is by opening up and revealing their emotional scars. And that's the moment when they connect with people and form bonds. And community doesn't happen without vulnerability. And being vulnerable about our emotional pain really helps. And they address those themes about pain even in the music choices. The first thing we hear in this movie are the words "Everybody Hurts," performed by REM. There's so many songs that reference pain, whether it's physical or emotional, and connect those two ideas, that it brings out the themes through the needle drops. Is Novocaine a superhero movie? So let's start with the best definition of superhero that I've found so far. If you find a better definition, please let me know, but this comes from Peter Coogan's book, What is a Superhero? So Peter Coogan's definition involves three things: a pro-social mission, powers that are beyond that of a normal person, and an identity that involves a moniker and uniform, both of which have something to do with their origin, powers, or mission. And in this case, his mission is not so much stop the bank robbers. They've already got the money, they're getting away, and he doesn't actually want to stop them, he doesn't actually want to kill them, and he doesn't want to stop them from robbing future banks. He just wants to rescue the hostage. That is it. So his mission is pro-social. Is it as pro-social as it could be? No, but that is true of literally everybody and literally everything. That is not a criticism. He definitely has powers, the way that the film presents it, that are beyond that of a normal person. But his identity, this is where it gets interesting. When he was a kid, people would call him Novocaine as kind of like a bully name to make fun of him. And then when he grew up, his girlfriend told him, yeah, that's badass. That is an awesome name. And he is recognizable by his outfit. He wears this very specific suit and a very specific tie to the point that at the end of the movie, it's a year later and he's able to wear exactly the same outfit and somebody's like, hey, it's the same outfit. And the cops are able to recognize him because somebody describes him as a skinny guy in a suit. It's not a very clear description, but it technically counts. That said, his uniform doesn't really have much to do with his origin or his mission or his powers, except in the sense that he feels like he's just a normal guy who is just trying to do the normal guy thing and got interrupted. So I guess that can be something to do with his origin or his mission, I guess. But there is this one shot right before the third act where he suits up into a different outfit and the camera wheels around him while going up his body like he's a superhero. And like this is that comic accurate suit that we've been waiting for the entire movie, except there's no comic and it's not a super suit. It's just a leather jacket. But also, he doesn't want to be a superhero. He doesn't think of himself as a superhero, at least not at the beginning. Somebody says, oh my gosh, you're a straight-up superhero. And he replies, yeah, I have the power of being able to step on a nail and not realize it until my foot is already bled out. But that's at the beginning of the movie. Perhaps part of his character arc is learning to accept that in his specific case, his disability is a superpower. And that's where I feel like some disabled people wouldn't really like that rhetoric. A lot of disabled people don't like the idea of your disability as a superpower because no, it's a disability. My fibromyalgia in particular is not a superpower. No, this is a disability. It's not like my body has so much pain that I'm able to take more pain than a normal person. No, that hurts. That hurts the amount that it would for... Actually, it hurts slightly more than it probably would for a normal person. Not that I would particularly know. I mean, that gets into like philosophical questions of quality and whether your red is the same as my red and whether your pain is the same as my pain. But that is not the point. The point is this sound. Do you hear that sound? Do you hear that? Because Novocaine has the best sound design of the year. The sound effects are essential to the movie. The entire joke of this black comedy is him doing things that would usually hurt, and then he doesn't actually feel any pain. So we have to hear it. If the sound design isn't incredible, the movie doesn't work. And it's not just the sound design, it's the sound mixing. Because this movie resurrected the lost art of dialogue mixing. I understood every word of dialogue without subtitles. I have hearing issues. I go into every movie expecting to not understand about 20% of everything they say. With Mickey 17, I didn't understand 70% of what they said because the dialogue mixing was so different in that movie. Even in Hundreds of Beavers, which is a silent movie, I didn't understand some of the dialogue. There's like 5 lines of spoken dialogue, and I didn't understand them. I needed subtitles for a silent movie. Even in A Quiet Place, there's barely any dialogue here. I still didn't understand all of it because of the dialogue mixing, and because of the sound mix, and because of the sound design, and because of how the actors are pronouncing their words. But in Novocaine, the dialogue that was supposed to be unclear was still clear enough. Apart from the substance, this is the best sound design and the best sound mixing I've heard in decades. But I do have a big question about Novocaine. Is that a heist? Today's contestant, Novocaine. So the absolute most, this is a counter heist. Think Die Hard, think Home Alone, think Paul Blart Mall Cop, and like all 3 of those movies, it's set at Christmas. And the whole movie is centered around a bank robbery, and a lot of the movie is about the getaway of the bank robbery, which does feel a lot like something you'd see in the 90s. This feels like Quick Change, or Reservoir Dogs, or A Fish Called Wanda, or How the Grinch Stole Christmas, for crying out loud. Now, I make videos about heist movies, and for academic purposes, like when I make my video about 2025 heist movies, I have to include this movie. But for consumer purposes, the heist is only like 10 to 15 minutes of screen time. And if I said, hey, do you want to watch a heist movie? And I put on Novocaine, this is not what you're expecting. This isn't a useful way to describe it. It's a little bit like saying that tomatoes are fruits. If I offered you a fruit, you're gonna be a little confused if I give you a tomato, but in an academic setting, that is actually a useful definition. On a scale of Oceans 1 to Oceans 11, I'm gonna give Novocaine a generous 6 Oceans. Novocaine is in theaters now. It stars Jack Quaid, Amber Midthunder, Ray Nicholson, Jacob Batalon, Betty Gabriel, and Matt Walsh. It is rated R for strong bloody violence, grisly images, and language throughout. There is no post-credit scene. Follow me on YouTube and Blue Sky at Movies and Heists for more movie love. You can get these videos a week early and help fund my heist movie at patreon.com/moviesandheists. Special thanks to these patrons for helping to fund my heist movie, titled Red and Black.